Hello Desert Bearhawk fans, we're in the shop today. I'm doing my as promised tool video. I started with the camera setup and an overhead deal and started filming last night, but it got to be over an hour long. Way too long for you guys to sit through. So I'm going to try to knock this out super quick, and if you have any questions about a specific tool or process, just message me and I'll try to answer as best I can. First of all, it's getting close to 100 in the shop. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so it probably won't be too hot in here today. But let's start with the tools that I can't put on my bench. First tool up is my Jet drill press. Picked it up brand new on Craigslist for 300 bucks. Very, very nice multiple speed drill press. You can see it's got the pulleys and you can adjust the speeds and whatnot. So drill press is a must-have. Over here is my homemade router table with my router mounted in it. You can see a flush trim bit sticking up. I got some miscellaneous tools and garbage laying on top of it, just being stored. I'm running out of space, but router table. I built the router table. It's basically one half of an EAA table, and then the router just bolts up from the bottom, and you're good to go. I got videos on my YouTube channel about it, so you can see those there. Over here is my 20-ton press. It's covered up with a blanket, but I use this 20-ton press from Harbor Freight to press all of my flanges on all of my lightning holes. Must have. Moving through the shop here, let's see. Of course, there's the 8-foot brake that's on loan to me from the local EAA chapter. Very handy. If you don't belong to EAA, join the EAA. Here's my Diversity 180 TIG machine from Miller that I purchased. Haven't really used it for anything yet. I'm just practicing with it, but it's a nice machine. You could have a 5-hour discussion about welding machines. This is very handy. I recommend it, especially for Bearhawk scratch builders, so when you're doing your joggles, you can get in there. This is a Craftsman 6-inch vise. I got it for $59 delivered. Amazon, I think, is where I purchased it. And the nice thing about it is that the jaws of this vise stick out enough where you can get your material in there and not hit the side of the vise. So you can get your rib in here deep enough to joggle it without, running aground on the side of the vise here. Very nice tool. Recommend it. $59. You can't go wrong. Let's see, moving along. All of my rib forms, like these guys right here, they're all cut out on this bandsaw right here. This is probably a 20-year-old Delta bench bandsaw. I used it for my hobby stuff for years, and all I did was put a more aggressive blade. I don't know if you can see the teeth on that blade. More aggressive blade in there, and it just cuts that MDF like no tomorrow. And so you don't need to go buy a high-dollar unit. You can get by with something like that. I did. I have a ProTech bench grinder. I've got a deburring wheel over here and a regular grindstone over here. As always, when running those, you should wear your safety glasses. Boo-boo. And another little tip for people running a grinder: when you start a grinder up, stand to the side, because these stone wheels, if they get fractured when they spool up, they'll come apart, and you don't want to be standing in front of that wheel when that wheel comes apart. It'll smack you in the face, maybe take an eye out, won't be good. Of course, if you have your safety glasses on, that wouldn't happen, right? Anyways, bench grinder, use it a lot, especially for deburring and putting around, rounding off corners and stuff with this deburring wheel. This deburring wheel I got at my local hardware supply house. Paid like 50 bucks for it, and at the time I thought it was pretty expensive, but I use it all the time and it was worth everything I paid for it. So let's see, what else do we have for tools I can't get on the bench? Down here I have my 6-inch belt disc sander from Craftsman. I use that a lot to sand the vertical stiffener bars for the spars, these bars right here. Let's see if we can see one. Yeah, these bars right here, I'd cut them close and then trim them to perfect size with that, sand them down with that 6-inch sander. So it's pretty handy tool. Okay, 4.5 minutes in and we finally get to the bench. I'm sure I'm going to forget some stuff, so forgive me, but we're going to just run through it real quick. You're going to need implements of destruction, specifically hammers. 4-pound sledgehammer, I use that to run my C-frame. I'll show you that in a minute. Wrap the handle with tennis racket wrap to make it more comfortable and lessen the chance of this 4-pound hammer come flying out of your hand when you're swinging away. 16-ounce ball peen hammer. This is a quality hammer. I got this at my hardware supply house. The 4-pound sludge and the dead blow. It's a Pittsburgh dead blow. Pittsburgh. I got those from Harbor Freight. I think I got 10 bucks in both these hammers. You can see that I've worn the dead blow completely out on one side and pretty close on the other. But I also made 170 or 180 ribs with it. So for a throwaway hammer, pretty good value. I have a huge assortment of clamps. This is a 2-inch clamp. Harbor Freight, 2-inch, right? Yeah, 2-inch. Harbor Freight, I think I paid $1.49 for that. I have a lot of them, as you can see right there, all hanging. And I probably could use 10 more. Well, I could have used 10 more when I was building my spar. So Harbor Freight's good for those as well. I have an assortment of files. Got rat tail, file, whatnot, file card, some needle files. You'll need those for cleaning up parts. A set of transfer punches. I got these at Harbor Freight for I think $8 or $9. I've only really used a 1/4-inch transfer punch, and that's to transfer the holes in my, let's go over here. Like here's a form block. I would put the transfer punch in the hole, and then I could transfer the center of that hole to the material underneath. It's good for tooling up. I have a video of that whole process on my channel, so you can see that there. The transfer punches. You can buy the same set for $100 from Cleveland or Spruce, but I like the $9 feature of Harbor Freight better. Over here I got a standard Dremel tool. Most hobbyists have those. I've used them for various things, knocking some burrs off. I'm going to use them when I go to cut the hinge pockets out of my ailerons and flaps. So Dremel tool, you probably have to have one of those. Next to it is a manual deburring driver. You put your deburr in the end there, and you can spin it around by hand, and it deburrs sheet metal. I'll show you more about that on the electric deburrer I have. This is also an edge deburring tool. There's the blade right there. Next to it I have a set of Coleco pliers. Actually I have 3 sets of Coleco pliers and I still can't ever find a set when I need them. And then here's some representative Colecos. The silver ones are 40s. The copper colored ones are 30s. The black ones are 21s. And then there's some Coleco type spring clamps. Those are 1-inch clamps. All very handy to have. Moving back over this way. Here's my grandfather's tin shears. I cut every single rib blank I have out with these tin shears to rough size. Every one. And they're still going strong. Next to that is my homemade fluting pliers. This is just a Harbor Freight pair of pliers that I drilled a 1/4-inch hole down the center of the nose of it. And I put a 1/4-inch piece of half-round steel in there. 1/4-inch dowel. Not half-round, but a 1/4-inch dowel. And then, of course, that makes a 1/4-inch hump on this side, and there's a 1/4-inch valley on that side, and voila, you have fluting pliers. I think I got about $5 in those fluting pliers. You can buy them pre-made for 25 or 30 if you don't feel inclined to make your own. But I made my own. Same thing with these pliers. It just some pliers, and I went in here and ground the serrations off of it so I wouldn't leave any tooling marks on my metal. And I use these mostly when I over flute a part with this. Put too much of a flute in, I can take these flat pliers and squeeze the flute back out. So, and again, I have lots of videos about that. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. Assortment of vice grip type clamps. This one here is the only one that's actually a vice grip clamp. These two here are from Harbor Freight. Paid $18 for one. I paid $2, $2 and $3 a piece for these. So Harbor Freight can be a value in that way. They're not the most quality tools, but they'll certainly do for 1 or 2 time application. Moving back up the table, here's my box of various countersinks, rivet sets, and dimple dies. You can get these from Brown, you can get these from Cleveland, you can get these from Spruce. All very handy. If you're going to be using a countersink or a dimple die, you already know what one of those are, so I don't need to go into it. It's my back riveting tool right here. I did a video on that. Look it up. Tell everything you need to know about back riveting. Finally here, you can see in this bag is my close quarters countersink tool. And basically what you do is you slide the die in, run this nail up through the middle of it, slide the other die on the other side of the material, and then put this whole thing in your pop rivet gun and squeeze it down, and it'll dimple your material. It's real handy for getting into tight spots. All right, let's just go right to this next stuff. Squeezers. It's my hand squeezer. It's a Tacco squeezer. And then I bought a aftermarket yoke for it to get into deeper. I've used both the small yoke and the big yoke, depending on what you're doing. You'll use them both. And very handy if you can't afford a pneumatic C-squeeze. I can't afford one either, but I have one because someone's loaned it to me. So I'm lucky that way. So I have a hand squeeze and a pneumatic C-squeeze. This one is a Chicago pneumatic, works really well. It has a standard yoke in it to accept sets here and here. I also bought these thin nose yokes that don't accept sets on this side. You just use this face of the yoke for an anvil, and you set your rivet right against that. I got a 4.5 inch and a 3-inch one, and I got about $300 in these two yokes alone. So between these two yokes and this C-squeeze outfit over here, you're looking at $1,000. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to buy the C-squeeze, so I don't have quite that much into it. So that's it for squeezers. Bucking bars. It's 3-pound bucking bar. I'm going to use it for back riveting on the wing. Haven't used it yet, but I will use it. It's heavy and nice and shiny and yummy. Next to it is my tungsten bucking bar, which I've used a lot. This bar weighs the same amount as this bar does, but you can see how compact it is. This is a 2.5-pound bar or so. And rivets just melt right underneath this thing. If you don't have a tungsten bar, I recommend getting a tungsten bar. Moving up this way, here's my rivet fan. I think I talked a little bit. It's going to be hard for me to get this open. Let's try that. And you use it to set rivet spacing. So basically you set one end, the last rivet or first rivet in the row goes here. The last rivet goes, wherever. If you want 10 in between, then you count over 10, put the last rivet there, and then it sets the spacing evenly all the way across. Very handy tool, and great for laying out stuff and saving time. Behind it is my micro set countersink cage. And the countersink bits that are right there, they go into this, and that's how you mechanically countersink a hole with this countersink cage. About $50. Probably ought to have one. Okay, moving across the bench. This electric screwdriver was a gift from a friend of mine, John, up in Colorado. For $10, he got it at an IKEA store. And it's an electric screwdriver, and it turns just the right speed to run this this deburring tool and deburring adapter. You can get this, I think you can get this deburring adapter at Brown or Cleveland, and then the deburr you can get from Spruce, Cleveland, Brown, whatever. But when you're doing hundreds, dare I say thousands of holes deburring, rather than using the hand deburrer right here, this little deburring tool is the ticket. So, all right. Here's another tool. You can get this only from Cleveland. It's a tool that puts a bevel on the edge of your flat sheets. So when you rivet one sheet onto another, you don't get the edge of the sheet curling up, because it kind of curls it down to begin with. And then when you rivet it, it just lays flat. This is an expensive tool and almost $50, but you're going to want to have one. Cleveland's the only people that sell that. Right here, I have a Unibit. I got this at a local hardware store. It's perfect for making nice round holes. You just step your way up. If you've ever watched American Chopper, that's all Paulie and his helper there, whatever the other guy's name is. They use it all the time. They drill every hole with a Unibit. It's kind of ridiculous, but it does make some nice round holes. Here I got some punches. These are punches for center punches, the whole set. and then next to it is the pin punch. You can see a pin punch does not have a point. I use the pin punch to drive out rivets when I'm drilling out a rivet. So you can get them in different sizes, 8, 3/32, whatever you need. Above that I have my pneumatic air drill from Mac, circa 1984. Served me well. Don't buy your air drill from Harbor Freight. Buy a decent drill. Buy a Sioux or something from one of the distributors. Brown or Cleveland Yard Store might have something that on sale that's good. But get a decent air drill. You're going to use it a lot, and it's going to be the difference between quality work and shoddy work. Next to that I have an angle drill, 90-degree angle drill. You can see, careful. You can see that the bit sits 90 degrees to the body of the drill motor. This is also on loan to me. This is a $500 plus unit, so I'm grateful to have it on loan to me. It's pretty invaluable. If I didn't have one available to me to be on loan, I would be purchasing one. So, angle drill. Air nibbler. This is a Harbor Freight unit, and it works remarkably well. I've nibbled, it sounds kind of stupid, I've nibbled a lot of sheet metal with this, and it works good. It's a brute force tool, but yeah, if you need to nibble out some area or remove a bunch of material fast, this thing will do it. Air nibbler. Moving forward here, this is the red box. It's upside down. Red box 737 kit from Brown Tool. It's a 3X rivet gun kit. 3X rivet gun. Comes with various sets and bucking bars. I think it's $1.99. It's worth every penny. I'm going to buy their 2X rivet gun kit because I want a 2X gun as well. The 3X is good for the 3s and the 4s on spars and heavier material, but I'm going to use a 2X when I'm skinning my wing because I don't want to beat up my material. 2X gun. I bought some accessories for my rivet gun as well. I have several of these offset rivet sets. You can see that it's offset so I can get in at funny angles and get to the rivets. They're a couple, $3 a piece, $7 a piece. I recommend you get some because you'll be in the middle of your work that day and need it and won't have it, and you'll have to stop and wait. So spend $6, $7, get a couple. Back up towards drills, I have a standard DeWalt 18-volt drill. I use that for building my EAA benches, which is what these benches are right here. And it works really good. It's not cheap, but it's going to last. So, you know, pick your poison there, whatever you want to do. Down here I have a 3.5-inch hand seamer from Harbor Freight. It's probably an $8 or $9 unit. I don't use it much, but when I do use it, it's very handy. I typically will use it when I'll get in on the, here I'll show you. If I can get this thing open. Set you down for a second. So like on these flanges right here, if I go to put a rib on there and it's not perfectly straight, I can take this hand seamer and just kind of put it on there, and I can give it a tweak one way or another and kind of straighten things out the way I want them. Hand seamer. So Harbor Freight, $8, good to have in your box. Moving along, I have an assortment of these slip clamps. I bought quality ones from Lowe's or Home Depot. I've had them, actually had them before I ever even started this project because I did some woodworking and of course model building. And you squeeze them, they come together, and then you release it with the trigger. They're really good for holding stuff in place, holding material down to the table while you're working on it, and so on and so forth. Over here is my dial caliper. When I first started doing the sheet metal, I was having a hard time distinguishing between 25 and 32 thousandths material because they're, 7 thousandths is not much, and I wanted to be sure, so I was using this a lot. I don't use it as much anymore, but I'm sure there'll come a point where I'll be using it again. Dial caliper. I have a couple of circle cutters here. I use these to cut the circles out of aluminum that form lightning holes, such as that one right there. So they work good. You want to make sure that when you run them in your press, you run them at the slowest speed your press will go. You don't want these things turning up, 1,500, 2,000 RPMs. I run them at 250 RPMs, so there you have it. Above them is just a standard mirror. Hello, hello. I got this one for free as a sample from Green Valley Glass and Mirror, and I use it all the time to look up underneath flanges to see if my rivet heads have been bucked properly or whatnot, so pretty handy. Next is a couple of homemade joggle bars. I did videos on that. This one's made out of a piece of 1/2 inch square key stock, and then I milled in a little joggle you can see there on a mill. And then this one is the joggle bar I use for my big ribs. This one for flap and aileron. This one for the center ribs. And this steel material I had laying around, and we milled that on the same mill. About a 40 thousandths depression to allow for some spring back. Okay, up here I have my brad nailer. That was handy when I was nailing down my aileron and my flaps to my building board to hold them flat and straight. I wasn't nailing the actual flap down, but I was using a wood door shim like this, and then I would slide the end of the door shim right here into the groove of the flat and then nail it to the board right there, and that would hold everything down nice and stiff. Don't need to have it, but it is a nice thing to have. Next is a compass. The compass I used when I was laying out my ribs to draw the circles and make sure everything was in the proper place. $3 at Office Depot. I've got a full drill index here. Oh, sticks down. Full drill index with one missing. It wouldn't be a proper drill index if one wasn't missing, so I have my cursory 5/64 bit is missing. I use this for anything that isn't a 40, a 30, or a 21. And then I have this drill bit set. I buy number 40 bits, number 30 bits, and number 21 bits in the 12-bit jobber packs from my hardware supply house. You'll probably want to do the same as you'll wear them out quickly. I have an assortment of Sharpies. You can never have too many. Usually whenever I'm at Office Max or whenever I'm walking through a store, if I see a package of Sharpies hanging there, I just grab them and throw them in with whatever I'm buying, because the aluminum wears them out quick, and I've gone through a ton of them. This is a homemade tool. I did a whole bunch of videos on homemade tools, so I won't go too much into it, but this is the rear spar attached fitting pattern, and you basically sandwich a piece of aluminum in between the two form blocks here, and then you run them on the router table over there and trim them to size. We won't talk too much about that. We're at 22 minutes now. Amazing. Hacksaw, just a standard hacksaw. All my cutting was done with a hacksaw. I know a lot of guys have bought band saws to cut, to cut the cap strips to length and cut the spacer bars to length. I did all my cutting by hand with the hacksaw. You don't need to have a $250 or $300 bandsaw, as I discussed earlier. Some of the most important tools you'll have is measurement tools. Measure twice, then measure a third time, then measure 2 more times to make sure you didn't screw up the first 4 times, and then measure it again. Because you do not want to cut something short, because you cannot make it long. No matter how much you swear at it, it won't get any longer. So have lots of good measuring tools. I got quality tape measure, I got quality squares, carpenter's squares, a quality 6-inch rule. I got a cloth tape. This is very handy for measuring around curved parts. I've got a bunch of these little 90-degree squares that are graduated and have scales on them as well. Get good measuring tools. You see here is my plumb bob. I haven't used it yet, but when I go to start building my wings, I'll get my spars plumb with this plumb bob right here. Over here is my C-frame. We've talked about it before. I riveted most of my spars with the C-frame. Rivet set here, rivet set here. Put the spar in there. Give it a smack with the 4-pound hammer and set the rivet. Use this tool a lot. It's a couple $100 worth every penny. Gotta have one. If you don't have one, you need to get one. Or you can fab one if you're one of those guys. You can make your own, but for me it was just easier to buy it. Here I have a 6 foot Pittsburgh level and or straight edge. More straight edge than level for me. Again, this is about an $8 or $9 deal from Harbor Freight. Pretty good little tool to have in the shop. It helps see if your table's plumb and square and whatnot. So I think that takes us through all the tools on the table here and all the tools that I've been using. Of course, there's I have my standard hand tools, your socket sets, your wrenches, that kind of stuff that I'm not showing you because I don't know how relevant it is. I mean, you should have all that stuff anyway. But that's basically all the tools that I use or have used so far on this project. And I've gotten pretty far, so doesn't take much. I know it seems like a lot of stuff. If you make friends with your EAA people, you can probably borrow the squeezer from somebody. You can probably borrow the 90-degree drill from somebody. You can probably borrow the 8-foot brake from somebody. All that stuff will save you a ton of money. So I try to cover everything. This is my final shot at it because I've been doing this for hours and I need to knock off and get going on my project again. But those are the tools I've been using. If you have a question about any of these tools, leave a comment, send a message, and I will do my best to try to dial you in or tell you what I think. And of course, what I think doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's just what I think. And if you got some suggestions for me, I'd love to hear them as well. So until we see you in the shop with spars, we'll see you in the shop next time.